I had one earbud in, sipping lukewarm herbal tea, when the subject line, Q2 strategy deck, final, use this one, popped up. That's how I knew I was back in the thick of it. My name's Elise. I'm 47, and I can decipher corporate jargon into plain English faster than most people can spell synergy. I clicked open the deck, took a deep breath, and got to work. Because if Mr. Peterson was calling a quarterly strategy review, it meant three things. The projections were massive, the stakes were higher, and he wanted me, not one of the fresh-faced grads Liam and Noah kept trying to present as lead consultants. Mr. Peterson managed the kind of client portfolio that made or broke year-end bonuses across our entire firm. It was high-stakes tech, with the intensity of a national debate, but over 5 years of complex negotiations, onboarding challenges, and countless 11:45 p.m. urgent clarifications, I'd earned his trust. He was direct, unsentimental, and didn't tolerate inefficiency. That morning, I was ready, dressed in my sharp blazer, subtle power jewelry, and my signature weapon, a color-coded report thicker than a university textbook. I'd stayed up until 2 a.m. cross-checking every metric, just to be sure Noah wouldn't stumble into the meeting with some outdated spreadsheet and trigger a financial headache. I even highlighted the sections that showed a 28% year-over-year increase in product adoption across Peterson's West Coast markets, numbers he could present to his board like a significant acquisition. I passed Liam and Noah's cubicles on the way to the boardroom and overheard the unmistakable sound of them chuckling over some expense report. Noah was loudly laughing like someone had just explained the concept of personal responsibility to him for the first time. Liam glanced up, saw me, and gave me his usual lazy, arrogant nod. "Hey, Elise, going to charm your tech mogul again?" I didn't even flinch. I'd heard worse from men with worse judgment, but it landed differently that day. Maybe it was the way Noah wheezed. "She's the client whisperer," like I was some mystical office creature who could conjure multi-million-dollar deals out of thin air. Maybe it was the way Liam winked like he'd just discovered a profound truth, but something bitter curled in my stomach. I smiled tightly. "He prefers data to flattery. Don't worry, I'll include you when the renewal hits 7 figures. They chuckled, oblivious, always forgetting the part where I had built that client relationship from the ground up while they were busy organizing company golf tournaments and outsourcing presentations to assistants named Chloe. The review went exactly as I expected, smooth as a well-rehearsed presentation. Mr. Peterson nodded through most of it, occasionally interjecting with a precise question, then flipping a page and grunting, "Good, very good." He lingered on the slide about projected scalability. "You're not underestimating Q3's implementation timeline?" "No, sir," I replied. "We built in a 2-week buffer. Your operations lead flagged it during our last sync." He stared at me a moment too long. Then, for the first time in 5 years, he smiled. "Appreciate the precision, Elise. We're likely to expand. I'll be in touch." And just like that, he left. A powerful figure in a tailored suit, holding the future of my firm in one firm handshake. I walked out of that room feeling like I'd just delivered a keynote speech in a crisis, energized by results, invigorated by efficiency, and ready to finally take a weekend off. But by the time I made it back to my desk, the email was waiting. Subject: Annual Compensation Adjustment. Please review. I opened it and blinked. I read it again. They deferred my bonus. No explanation, no meeting, just a copy-pasted paragraph about temporary structural rebalancing and a vague promise to revisit things pending additional performance data. It didn't make sense. Not after that meeting. Not after 5 years of carrying that account on my back like a foundation supporting a skyscraper. My first instinct was to assume it was a clerical error. Maybe payroll clicked the wrong name. Maybe Chloe accidentally toggled the wrong field in the system. I stood and walked straight into Liam's office. Noah was already perched on the corner of his desk, like a low-budget motivational speaker, and I said, "There's been a mistake." Liam tilted his head, mock sympathy oozing off him. "No mistake, Elise. We had to tighten things up this quarter." "Tighten things up? We just secured a 3-year expansion." Noah shrugged, sipping from a company-branded mug like it contained corporate wisdom. "Strategic reallocation. You know how it is." I stared. "So, let me get this straight. I carry the firm's biggest client through a volatile quarter. They confirm expansion, and you decide now is the time to dock my bonus?" Liam smiled like he was congratulating a child for a minor achievement. "We appreciate your dedication, but we also need team players, people who aren't focused on individual gains." I almost laughed, but the bitterness was rising too fast in my throat because suddenly I could see it. The scheme, the replacement, the plan. The same playbook corporate opportunists have been using since the invention of the office cubicle. Let the woman build it, then hand it off to a guy named Chad when it's too profitable to ignore. I left that office with a smile so tight it could cut glass. But I already knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a calculated move, and I'd just been handed the short end of the stick. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I stared at the ceiling fan spinning like a restless mind. The conversation ran on loop while my cat snored on my bed and my phone buzzed with professional network alerts. I was too upset to check. "Tighten the belt," Liam had said, like I was the one inflating the budget with catered lunches and quarterly strategy retreats that mostly involved arcade games and cheap beer. By 7 a.m., I was back in the office because when a woman in corporate gets sidelined, the first instinct is usually to work harder. I went through the motions like nothing had happened. But inside, I was unraveling. I pulled up our latest client performance metrics and stared at the numbers like they were going to apologize to me. A 42% increase in monthly recurring revenue. A retention rate so good it could have been fabricated. Upsell numbers that would have given Noah a shock if he'd known how to read them. And yet, here I was, bonus deferred, which is executive code for never happening unless someone leaves or gets caught. At noon sharp, I walked into conference room B for my scheduled performance review. It was just Liam and Noah sitting across the table, like they were auditioning to play entitled executives in a streaming drama. Liam had his sleeves rolled like he'd been doing manual labor. He hadn't. Noah was pretending to scroll something important on his tablet like I didn't know he still used the default password. "Elise," Liam said, gesturing to a chair with that patronizing tone HR manuals call inclusive. "First off, great work with the Peterson account. He seems really happy." I nodded. "He's expanding. Said he'll be in touch." "Exactly," Noah cut in like he'd personally overseen the deal. "That's huge for us." "So," I said, folding my hands, "I assume we'll be revisiting the bonus issue." They both did that thing men do when they're about to deliver bad news and want you to feel like it's a regrettable necessity. Liam sighed like this was difficult for him. "We wish we could," he said, "but the timing is just rough. The company's shifting its strategic focus and we're reallocating resources for bigger plays." "What bigger plays?" Noah gave me a smile that made my jaw ache. "Let's just say we're planting seeds, big picture stuff, long-term vision." "You're making this up," I said flatly. "There's no strategy. You're just hoarding capital." Liam bristled. "That's an unfair assumption." "Is it?" I leaned forward. "Because if I'm the one who brings in the most revenue and I'm the only one not getting a bonus, I'm not sure what else to assume." They exchanged a glance, the kind men share when they've already agreed on something behind closed doors. Noah cleared his throat. "We've decided," he said, "to pilot a new incentive structure. More team-focused, less reliant on individual numbers. The industry is shifting. Collaboration over competition." "I was collaborative," I said. "I onboarded Mark when you two couldn't remember his last name. I ran your presentations. I corrected your financial projections when you presented them incorrectly in Q1. Liam waved a hand. "We're not saying you're not valuable. You're just saying I'm too expensive. Silence. I felt something rise in my throat. Not tears, the kind of rage that shows up when someone takes credit for your survival while pushing you off a cliff. What's really going on? I asked. Why now? What are you not telling me? Liam leaned back, trying to sound wise. We've had to tighten the belt. There's a new strategic investment in the works. You'll see it unfold soon. That was the first moment the puzzle clicked sideways in my head. Because if we were financially strained, why were they smiling like privileged students who just snuck into a VIP lounge? Something wasn't adding up. I left the room without another word. Because when you're being manipulated by two men whose idea of management is forwarding emails and nodding aggressively, there's no point arguing. They'd already decided I didn't fit their version of the future. But I did what I always do. I went back to my desk, opened a new document, and started gathering evidence. If they were going to mislead me, I'd at least make them explain it slowly, in writing, with citations. By Monday morning, I had a 17-page report with footnotes, charts, time-stamped emails, and even a pie chart titled Revenue Secured by Elise FY to Date that looked like a financial roadmap bleeding green. I dressed like a battle general, navy blazer, no jewelry, heels that made me look 5% less tired. I walked into the HR suite carrying a printed copy of the bonus clause from my original contract and a face that said, "Challenge me." The meeting was set for 9:30. HR had sent Brenda, who once told me she doesn't believe in negativity while writing someone's termination notice on cheerful stationery. She greeted me with a sugary sweet smile and a clipboard clutched like a security blanket. Liam and Noah flanked her, sipping expensive coffees like it was brunch and not a formal grievance meeting. "Let's keep this collaborative," Brenda chirped. "We're all here to listen." That was rich coming from a woman who treated ethical violations like awkward endorsements. I laid out my case quietly, professionally. I handed out copies of my report like it was essential reading, then walked them through each section. Performance metrics, bonus benchmarks, client retention, direct quotes from Mr. Peterson's last 3 quarterly reviews, including, "Elise's team has been the only reliable part of this entire vendor process." And then I dropped the printout of our contractual bonus clause, highlighted in yellow like a crime scene. When I finished, I folded my hands and said, "Now, unless there's a legal redefinition of exceeds expectations, I'd like to know what justification you're using to withhold this bonus." Brenda smiled again, her version of a strategic move. "We appreciate your thoroughness," she said like she was reviewing a fashion board. "But compensation structures are reviewed holistically now, not just based on individual accounts." I blinked. "Holistically?" Noah nodded sagely. "It's about the ecosystem, interdepartmental synergy. We want people who uplift the whole team, not just perform well in a silo." "I built the silo!" I snapped. "I was the team!" I coached Mark, cleaned up after his mistakes, translated Liam's spreadsheet gibberish into English, and covered for you both when you missed calls because your golf game ran over. Brenda made a note on her clipboard like I'd said something about my pet's birthday. Liam leaned forward. "Elise, we hear you, but when a company grows, its needs change, and we need people who can grow with us, who can shift their perspective beyond personal recognition." There it was, not even subtle anymore. "Let me translate," I said. "You're replacing value with loyalty. And loyalty in your book means shutting up while you take credit for my work." Brenda cut in gently. "We're not trying to diminish your contributions, but—" "You have," I said, "and now you're trying to gaslight me into believing it's about culture." Noah leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms like he was settling in to explain the obvious. "Elise, this isn't personal. But we need people who are team players, not people who are just focused on their own compensation." It was said with the finality of a verdict, not a conversation, not a negotiation. That's when I knew I'd lost the room. Not because I hadn't made my case, but because the case didn't matter. The system wasn't malfunctioning. It was designed to exclude women like me once we stopped being convenient. I left the room holding my binder like a shield, my knuckles white. Back at my desk, I noticed something. My shared folders were gone. Access restricted. The files I'd built, templates, contact sheets, client profiles, all quietly reassigned or archived. They were already erasing me. Every colleague who used to swing by my desk for advice now walked past like I was to be avoided. No eye contact, no smiles. One guy even turned around in the hallway when he saw me coming. The message was clear. She spoke up. She's next. It wasn't dread anymore. It was inevitability. I tried to follow the rules, document everything, say all the right things, smile while I was hurting, but they didn't want accountability. They wanted silence, and I wasn't giving it to them. It happened on a Thursday, because of course it did. Thursdays are when bad things pretend to be professional. I was halfway through rewriting a scope of work document because Noah had misspelled a crucial term. I got the instant message from Brenda. Can you step into conference room C? No calendar invite, no context, just corporate ambush. I walked in and the lights were too bright. Brenda was already seated. Liam was standing like a substitute principal. And Noah was doing his fake concerned face, the one he practiced in the mirrored elevators. Elise, Brenda began, voice syrupy with rehearsed regret. This won't take long. Liam jumped in. Given a lot of thought to your recent attitude. I blinked. My attitude? Noah slid a folded paper across the table like it was a peace treaty and not a termination notice. We've made the decision to end your employment, effective immediately. I stared at it, then at them. For what? Exceeding my revenue targets? Making you look incompetent in front of your own client? Brenda cut in quickly. There have been concerns about insubordination, about the tone you've used in internal communications. Tone, I said, the favorite weapon of people who can't handle facts. Liam crossed his arms. You've created a negative work environment. I laughed, one sharp, ugly sound. You mean I refused to play dumb while you took my work and denied my bonus? Noah flinched but didn't deny it. You can't be serious, I said. I've been with this company for 7 years. I've rescued accounts that were failing. I've worked weekends, holidays, covered for your personal issues, and now you're accusing me of being toxic? Brenda didn't blink. This is not a debate, Elise. Your access has already been revoked. And just like that, it was done. Security was already waiting outside the conference room door. 2 guys in ill-fitting suits who looked like they usually guarded empty offices during renovations. One of them handed me a cardboard box like I was being sent home from a failed project. No need to return to your desk, Brenda said. We'll forward your personal items. I stood, shaking from somewhere deep in my core. I have client files, contacts, notes. Half of your Q3 strategy is in my documents. Liam had the decency to look mildly ashamed. Noah didn't. He just smirked. That's proprietary information, he said. It belongs to the company. I looked at him dead in the eye. It wouldn't have been a company without me carrying that Peterson account through your extended lunches. But they were done listening. I wasn't a person anymore. I was paperwork. They didn't even let me go to the restroom. Just walked me past the reception desk like a shoplifter who got caught taking a small item. And that's when I saw him. Mark standing outside Noah's office in his new dress shirt, holding a coffee he didn't make. That smug grin people wear when they know they've been handed something they didn't earn. He looked at me, then quickly looked away, but not before I saw it. That flicker of triumph. The kind of look you give your reflection when you finally get the promotion your mentor wasn't finished training you for. He walked into Noah's office. The door closed, and everything clicked. They weren't just pushing me out. They were replacing me with him. The guy who once asked me what margin meant in a spreadsheet. The guy I stayed late for, covered for, edited emails for. The guy who used to thank me with awkward gestures and now wouldn't make eye contact as I got escorted out like an HR cautionary tale. I stepped into the elevator with my box and a hollow chest. And as the doors closed, I didn't cry. I smiled because I knew something they didn't. I wasn't just fired. I was freed. For 6 days, I lived on instant noodles, anxious naps, and budget snacks. I stared at the blank walls of my apartment like they owed me answers. My inbox was a graveyard of generic emails from recruiters who offered $30,000 less than I was worth, and job descriptions written by someone who thought must thrive under pressure was a personality type. My dignity had skid marks, and my bank account looked like it had been robbed. I screamed into a pillow exactly 3 times. Once after finding a social media post from Mark bragging about rising to the challenge with our former premier tech client. Once when I found an old sticky note that said Peterson Call Prep Deck in my own handwriting. And once when I realized I was searching for how to sell plasma near me while clutching a master's degree. But somewhere in that swamp of rage and existential dread, a thought started to sprout. A weird, stubborn little weed in the crack of my mental sidewalk. What if I don't go back? What if I didn't play their game again? What if instead of interviewing at another sterile office where I trained my replacement with a smile, I took the one thing they couldn't take from me? My clients, my skills, my resolve, and did something unthinkable? So, I did it. I filed for an LLC with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. E-Read Consulting. Sounded respectable, safe, like someone who wore structured blazers and billed in 30-minute increments. I drained my savings, every last emergency penny I'd stashed over the years for someday, and bought a domain name, a printer that immediately jammed, and a desk from a discount store that I built with 3 frustrated exclamations and half a screwdriver. My new office, my dining room, my marketing budget, $12 and a free template. I moved a decorative plant off the windowsill and turned it into a phone stand. I used a cheap bedsheet as a curtain because the sunlight kept blinding my webcam. The walls were still blank, but now they pulsed with possibility. Or maybe that was the early onset panic attack. I couldn't tell the difference yet. I lived on caffeine and defiance. I built service packages, read 4 books on consulting, and wrote my own onboarding checklist that started with Step 1, never trust a man named Liam. I stayed up until 3 a.m. reworking old presentations I had saved on a backup drive they didn't know about. I wasn't rebuilding. I was arming myself. And then came the hard part. Going public. The social media post. The announcement. The digital equivalent of standing on a soapbox in a busy park and yelling, I am unemployed, but still pretending I have my life together. I must have rewritten it 20 times. Too cold? I'd sound bitter. Too warm? I'd look pathetic. Too formal? I'd be ignored. Too honest? I'd burn bridges I hadn't even crossed yet. In the end, I kept it simple. After many years supporting enterprise accounts across tech and logistics, I'm excited to launch E-Read Consulting, a firm specializing in strategic vendor management and scalable client growth. Grateful for every experience that brought me here. Let's connect. No sarcasm, no hidden meaning, just enough polish to hide the desperation. I hovered over the post button for 10 solid minutes. Then I clicked it and stared at the screen like I just submitted my soul for public review. No confetti, no applause, no divine declaration declaring me reborn. Just silence. But beneath that silence, for the first time in weeks, I felt it. Not hope exactly, something stronger, more resolute, more useful. Purpose. The post went live on a Tuesday afternoon. I figured 2:17 p.m. was safe. Late enough to avoid the lunch scroll, early enough to catch the post-caffeine wanderers. I stared at the screen like it owed me a prophecy, waiting for fireworks, the corporate gods to descend, and reward me for my bravery with six-figure contracts and digital applause. Instead, I got one clapping hands emoji from a girl I hadn't spoken to since 2011, two emoji-only replies from people who definitely hadn't read past the first line, and a "let's grab coffee sometime" from a man who once asked me in a meeting if I got emotional often or just today. Then silence, a vast, echoing, oxygen-sucking silence. No one important commented, no inquiries, no messages from decision-makers. My old coworkers were quieter than a jury during sentencing, and the only thing louder than the silence was my banking app pinging me about an unusually low balance, which frankly felt like an editorial comment. By week 2, I started rationing my expensive coffee. Week 3, I downgraded my internet package and prayed during video calls. By week 4, I was arguing with my cat about whether cheese counted as dinner. Doubt slithered in through the cracks. Mean, sticky doubt. The kind that wraps around your throat at 3 a.m. and whispers, "You should have stayed quiet. You should have stayed small. You are not built for this." And then one night, as I was furiously cleaning my digital calendar and calculating how many possessions I'd need to sell to make rent, my inbox pinged. Not my company email, my personal one. Subject: no subject. Sender: M. Peterson. Just one line. Interesting. Send me a capabilities deck. I reread it 9 times. I checked the header to make sure it wasn't faked. I checked the timestamp, 11:42 p.m. Classic Peterson. The man ran on caffeine and precision. If he was emailing me at midnight from his personal account, it wasn't casual. This wasn't a pity message. This was reconnaissance. He wasn't just being polite. He was testing me, seeing if I was serious, seeing if I still had what it takes. Capabilities deck was corporate code for pitch yourself like your mortgage depends on it, which, funny enough, it now did. I didn't scream. I didn't dance. I just sat there staring at the email, pulse thundering in my ears like I'd just been handed a live grenade with my name on it. Because this was a crack in the dam. Not a flood, but something. And that was enough. Enough to pull me out of the spiral. Enough to make me stand up, march to the fridge, pour the last bit of cheap wine into a mug that said, "Nevertheless, she calculated ROI," and toast myself. Because he hadn't emailed them. He'd emailed me. And suddenly, after weeks of static, the silence was listening. I didn't sleep for 2 days. Didn't shower the first day either, if we're being honest. Just lived in a rotating fog of bullet points, black coffee, and the deep, throbbing hum of, "Don't screw this up." Every sentence of that capabilities deck had to land like undeniable truth. No fluff, no jargon, just hard, cold value because Mr. Peterson didn't care how many celebratory events you attended. He cared if you could save him time and make him look smart to his board. So I worked like I was possessed. Not inspired, possessed. Hair in a messy bun, still wearing the old hoodie I cried in after my termination. Building this deck like it was a rescue plan from a crashing orbit. I reverse-engineered his business priorities, dissected our old performance indicators, and then rebuilt them into a lean, mean, results-screaming machine. Slide 1. Problem: your current vendors are inefficient and slow. Slide 2. Solution: I'm neither. I didn't name names, but the subtext was clear. By the second night, I was talking to myself like a negotiator. "Okay, Elise, if he hates this, become a dog walker. That's fine. Dogs are loyal, unlike humans." At 2:37 a.m., I added a slide about vertical integration that would have made a business school graduate weep. At 3:09, I cut it because I wasn't pitching to an academic conference. I was pitching to a man who once said, "Anything over 5 words is marketing fluff." At 6:14 a.m., and with shaky hands and the kind of breath you get from living off almonds and a desire for vindication, I clicked send. Subject: Capabilities deck as requested. No emojis, no exclamation points, no "hope this finds you well," just the document and a one-line email. Attached is the deck outlining my approach to supporting your Q3 expansion initiatives. Happy to discuss. Then I closed my laptop, unplugged my modem for no reason except symbolic catharsis, and laid down on the carpet next to my cat like a witness waiting for a verdict. The next 7 hours were a masterclass in psychological torment. I cleaned out a drawer I hadn't touched in years. I organized my socks by color. I tried to meditate, but ended up stress searching for cheap alternatives to stress relievers and what does a minor headache feel like? Then at 1:22 p.m., it came. Subject: Discussing new contract. No body, just a calendar invite from Peterson's executive assistant. 30-minute call, next day. No fluff. That title, Discussing New Contract, wasn't cautious. It wasn't exploratory. It wasn't, let's circle back. It was a decision. I stared at it so long I forgot how blinking worked because I knew that man. He didn't take calls to gather information. He took calls to seal deals. The deck wasn't just received. It was enough. More than enough. It had confirmed what he already suspected. That I was the value, not the firm. That I was the reason those numbers ever made sense. That while Liam and Noah were out there toasting each other with client-funded drinks, I was the one keeping his business from sliding into chaos. And now he was coming to me, not as a friend, not as a charity case, but as a vendor, as a threat to the people who thought I was replaceable. I stood up, walked to the bathroom mirror, and stared at the woman who'd been dragged out of a conference room under bright lights like a criminal. And I smiled because now the spotlight was on me. The call lasted 19 minutes and 43 seconds. Peterson opened with, "I read the deck twice. It was better the second time." No small talk, no corporate pleasantries, just the verbal equivalent of signing the bottom of a check with conviction. He asked smart, precise questions. I answered like my future depended on it, because in a way, it did. At the 17-minute mark, he said, "We'll be terminating the current agreement with your former employer by end of day. I'll forward their legal team the formal notice." Just like that. No drama, no discussion, just a clean corporate severing. I nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see me. "Understood. I'll wait for your onboarding package." "Expect it before lunch," he said. "And Elise?" I held my breath. "Don't screw this up." Then he hung up. I stared at my reflection in the black screen like I was watching someone new emerge. The silence in my apartment was a living thing. Not empty, alive, buzzing with adrenaline, disbelief, and a giddy kind of triumph. Because this wasn't just real, it was done. The firm I'd given 7 years of my life to was now irrelevant to him. Like flipping a switch. And oh, the fallout. It started within the hour. I hadn't even opened the new client portal before I got a text from Sarah in billing. 3 words. Chaos erupted. Then a flurry of pings from blocked numbers. I didn't answer. By 3 p.m., I had 2 voicemails from Liam, one tight and angry, the other trying way too hard to sound friendly. I didn't listen past, "We think there's been a misunderstanding." I forwarded them to my trash folder and labeled it compost. By 5 p.m., I got the best message of all, a breathless voicemail from Mark. His voice was shaking like someone had just pulled the training wheels off his job and handed him a flaming sword. "Elise, hey, so I'm trying to pull your old decks and I can't. They said you didn't document anything, which I know isn't true. I'm just really in the dark here and do you mind calling me back? They don't know anything and Liam is losing his, and just let me know." Click. I played that one twice. Not for information, for joy, because I could see it clear as day. The moment Liam walked into that conference room and saw the termination letter with Peterson's signature, the way Noah probably flipped through it like there had to be a loophole, a typo, something. And when there wasn't, just a cold line that read, due to a change in strategic vendor alignment, they panicked. And Mark, sweet, unprepared Mark, left standing in the ashes of a contract he'd never understood, surrounded by buzzwords he couldn't pronounce and spreadsheets that were unreadable. They'd stripped my role, exploited my work, and assumed the client would stay because the logo was the same. They didn't understand. The client hadn't been loyal to them. He'd been loyal to me. I poured myself a glass of whatever cheap sparkling water was left in the fridge and stood by the window, watching traffic crawl by like ants with responsibilities. Somewhere downtown, in their cold glass office tower, Liam and Noah were probably pacing like caged animals, trying to patch a bleeding artery with buzzwords and denial. And me? I had my laptop, my cat, and a retainer agreement sitting in my inbox that made my old salary look like a trivial amount. The empire they built on arrogance had just been set on fire by a woman they thought was disposable. And the best part? I hadn't raised my voice once. The payment hit my account on a Tuesday at 9:03 a.m. I was still in pajama pants, hair up in a bun so crooked it looked like a mistake, sipping coffee that tasted like burnt ambition when my banking app buzzed. One transaction, wire transfer, 6 figures, more than I'd ever made in a year, from Peterson and Associates Operations Memo, Phase 1, Strategic Onboarding. I stared at it like it might disappear. The zeros might slither off the screen and spell "just kidding" if I blinked too hard. But it didn't. It just sat there, calm and substantial and real. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I sat very, very still because that money wasn't just capital. It was confirmation, proof that I'd been right and they'd been short-sighted. That my value hadn't been a projection. It had been the core. And now the man who mattered most had written it in digits with a wire transfer instead of words. I took a screenshot, printed it out, and taped it to the inside of my pantry like a shrine. But fate, as it turns out, had one more gift. At 11:12 a.m., I got an email from Sarah in billing. The subject line, "Thought you might enjoy this." Attached was a PDF of an internal company email chain, redacted just enough to protect her job, but otherwise intact. And there it was, an email from Mr. Peterson to Liam, Noah, and their general counsel. "Future payments body, please keep him away from amateurs." Attached, confirmation of wire transfer to E-Read Consulting. I read it once, then again, then out loud. Please keep him away from amateurs. Him. Mark, the knockoff account manager they tried to pass off like a brand name replacement. The spreadsheet fumbler, the email forwarder, the intern in grown-up pants. Peterson didn't just cut the cord. He embarrassed them, put it in writing, made it permanent, and then sent the evidence directly to me like a trophy for surviving. The beauty of it wasn't just in the money. It was in the clarity. In knowing that behind those glass walls, Liam and Noah had to read that sentence, keep him away from amateurs, and know it was about them. Not a whispered quote, not a rumor in the break room, a formal message from the man they respected, addressed to their inboxes with my name on the wire. I closed the email, leaned back in my chair, and exhaled like I hadn't in months. I didn't want to gloat. I wanted to be the bigger person. But the truth felt good, better than good. It felt earned. The men who dismissed me, minimized me, replaced me, and erased me were now sitting in meetings trying to explain to their board how a woman they called difficult walked off with their biggest client. And I was busy. Too busy to take calls. Too busy to look back. Too busy building something they'd never be invited to understand. Let the amateurs scramble. I had work to do. This story teaches us that true value often resides not in titles or corporate structures, but in individual skill, dedication, and integrity. When faced with unfairness or betrayal, it's easy to feel defeated. However, Elise's journey shows that adversity can be a powerful catalyst for growth and independence. She transformed her anger and frustration into focused determination, building something stronger and more aligned with her own worth. The positive message here is to always believe in your capabilities, even when others try to diminish them. Don't be afraid to stand up for yourself and your contributions. Sometimes, the path to true success and fulfillment lies in breaking away from environments that don't recognize your value and creating your own opportunities. Your skills are your own, and no one can truly take them away. When you are authentic and unwavering in your commitment to excellence, the right opportunities and recognition will find you.